Hello and welcome to Coffee and Bonsai with Tom. Today we have an exciting episode for you. We're going to prune this little Portulacaria Afra. This is one of the first ones, probably might be one of the first ones I've ever owned. Actually, I got it from a club meeting, and it's lived its entire life in this pot. And it had a little bit of a rough winter. It was a victim of one of my experiments in automated watering that just didn't quite work out. And as an additional surprise, we were going to repot this into a what I think will be a much better pot. I was never that happy with this pot. I just kind of threw this tree into something I had. Like I said, it's lived its whole life in here. And I think it's just a charming little tree, and I think it deserves a better pot. But to start with, I want to do a little pruning here. Nothing major. I'm just going to, cut back some of the stuff that's grown. Like I said, this tree had a tough time, and I don't think I have any pictures of it. It was nearly dead. I mean, it looked terrible, and it's bounced back really well, particularly since I put it outside. And I think it's strong enough to have a bit of pruning here, and, to risk even repotting it. I mean, these trees are quite hardy, and this one looks healthy. I don't expect there to be much roots. And I'm gonna, I'm pruning it, but I'm not taking off major branches. I'm just cutting back stuff that's kind of gotten a little wild, and I want to put it in, maybe a pot with a bit more room, and let it just kind of run wild in there a bit, and then kind of grow out the trunk a little bit more, and let it get super strong, and go into this winter really strong, and let it recover, so that's my plan. So I'm just kind of doing some neatening up here, basically just cutting back to 1 or 2 sets of leaves, and anything that's overly long or thick or unsightly, I'll just take it off, and get it so there's a little bit of light in there. And like this is, this growth here has gotten a bit long, and especially for where it's growing in the tree, if I just thin it out a bit, I think it gives it a much better overall pleasing look. The top in particular tends to grow quite heavily, so I'm focusing on that a bit more to get that under control. But, also on the side, you can see we've got some overly long branches here, and if we let them go much longer, they are just going to get thicker, so it makes sense just to thin them out now and work on ramification and branches that we want to keep. So it's definitely starting to take shape, looking like somebody cares for it. I'm kind of taking back some of this rough stuff, thinning it out, and getting it ready for its next phase of growth. We're kind of like, well into summer now. Summer's really cooking, and it's sort of like, given that I work mostly with jades, it's kind of like my spring, right? Like, this is the time when I do a ton of repotting, because everything is just growing like crazy, and everything recovers so quickly and puts on so much growth, that it's sort of like by spring, if you deal with deciduous trees and evergreens and other trees, where you're really kind of focusing on a very short window of repotting. We have, you can do it kind of any time with these, but summer they really call out and wish to be repotted. So that's what we're doing. I'm going to repot this one because that's what I do this time of year. Taking off some of this growth on the interior, that was really kind of cluttering up the trunk, and take that off. That's much better. Gives it a much more balanced top. And I don't know how much more pruning we're going to do here. I think we're getting quite close. Do a little nip and tuck here, because I want to move on to repotting this wonderful little tree. So I did a few more minor cuts, but let's clean this up, and we'll take on the next task of getting this little tree out of the pot and having a look at some new pots that we may want to put it in. So here we go. We're going to take this guy out of the pot, and I do have it wired in, so I'm going to get rid of this this wire. And I don't know why I used this super fine wire, but I'm just going to nip it off. You shouldn't do that with your scissors, by the way. And it's a curved pot. I didn't think it had much roots, but it doesn't seem like it wants to come out, so I'm just going to kind of gently pry in here. And this thing is quite dry as well, which is always sort of a good idea when you're repotting. I'm just sort of loosening it. I don't know if you've dealt with these curved sided pots. They kind of can be a little hard to get the tree out. So I'm just going to gently pry and lift at the same time. And yeah, it's coming right out. And yeah, I mean, it has some roots. I didn't expect it to have a ton of roots, but the root ball looks fabulous. So we're not going to prune it or anything. And I'll save that soil. And we will get some pots together here. Now I have several pots I want to take a look at. I don't know, 3 or 4. And I find it's much easier to tell what to do if you just kind of take the tree and its root ball like this and sit it in the pot and see what you think. So here's the first pot. This is a Hattori pot. I think all the pots that I had a little Hattori pot buying spree, and this is a beautiful yellow one. I mean, just look at this. His pot's like, I don't know, it's his glazing technique. Like, they get patina so much more readily than other pots, and I just really like this. You can see his chop there. I just really like this beautiful yellow. It's kind of like a soft, nice yellow. I also have a green one here that's, it's kind of a faded green, but it looks quite old, and the tree looks good. Looks good in that pot too. You can see it's got some room to grow, probably more than it had in that tiny blue pot. The yellow pot, by the way, had a lot of decent room. And I've got one more that I'm sort of thinking about, also a Hattori pot, and it's got this beautiful, it's kind of a cracked, but it's sort of it's not crackle, it's kind of like this long crack green. And let's just, sometimes I just kind of go back and forth. This yellow one is, I think it's a little big, but I just really like the pot. And I don't know, somehow the tree, as I imagine it filling out and getting a third bigger, I think it'll probably be about right for that. Whereas this one is probably about the right size now, and I think it'd be big enough for the health of the tree. But I'm not completely sure. And then this one again. I love this pot. I actually like this one better than the middle one. It's got the color really complements the leaves. So it's probably between those two. So let's have the final bake-off here. I think I've got it between this yellow one and this guy, who looks a little more formal. It's almost like it's wearing a suit or something. It's quite delightful. I think I don't know. I think the playfulness of the yellow is really just keeps, sparking my brain and makes me a little happy. But this one, this also looks great. It looks more, it's less whimsical, I guess, and but it's also quite charming, and I do like the stripe on there. And this is what you got to do. You sort of have to go back and forth and look at these, and look at the depth. It's definitely, the yellow would offer more room, and I think this tree could live in that yellow pot for quite a while without any concerns at all. Yeah, I think we're going yellow. This pot, it just feels right to me, and so there we go. Decision made. And yellow it will be. So I went ahead and put some screens and some wire in here. You can see the fancy chop that Hattori has there, and you can read about them as well. I'll put a link in the program notes. And this pot had some nice holes, which I did not take advantage of. I'm so used to not having wire holes in my pots that, you know, I just went ahead and put this in. I am going to wire this tree in because it doesn't have a lot of roots, and, you know, this neighbor cat keeps like exploring my my bench, and so I'm quite concerned about it. Although I love the cat, and he's more than welcome to explore the bench, but he likes to rub against things, so I'm wiring it in. So I put the old soil in there, and I'm gonna have to get some new soil as well. So let me go ahead and do that. So I've got my soil here. This is the last bits of some of my Superfly bonsai soil, which I absolutely love their soil. So I'm just gonna take the old soil and a scoop of the new soil and mix those together a bit with my spoon. And you know, it's basically just inorganic soil. I think the Superfly stuff has some, it has both akadama and pumice in it, which is interesting, but I'll tell you, I really like it and it works well. So let's, got a little bit of a mound in there, and we'll see the tree. This is actually the quote front of the tree, although I think it looks just as good from the back, so I'm not exactly sure on that. It might be one of those trees you can have either way. But anyway, we'll put it in here, and you can look at it from either side of the pot because both sides look great. And I just want to get the height right, kind of wiggle it in there a bit and see how that looks. I definitely want to pay attention to the angle of the tree because I had it totally wrong in that blue pot, or it grew that way. So I think it's a little, let me just move some of this soil. I think it's a little, I don't know, a little high. So I just took a little bit out because there wasn't enough room to wiggle in there. But let's see what I think here. Yeah, I think that looks okay. It might be a little low now. I guess I'm not too concerned about it because I think I'm going to kind of mound soil up anyway because there aren't a lot of roots. But I'll try to work this in. See how that goes. I'm just kind of straightening out the roots that it does have. So that, you know, they'll grow radially. So I'm just kind of getting it in position. And, you know, I think I do want to raise it up just slightly and kind of have it be a bit more upright. Initially I was thinking it might be slanted, but I think if I just lift it a bit, I think that just looks better. So I think I'll hold it in place here and dump the soil in, and then just kind of work it in around it. And, you know, that also helps to kind of get the roots going kind of downward, right? Because they'll start off at a downward slope and just keep growing in that direction as they search for moisture. I think that's about the right height. I can see some of the nabari on the bottom. So I'm going to wrap the wire in there. And, you know, I like to cut the wire off. I don't like having all this wire hanging out, so I usually snip it like that. Kind of start it and then apply it with pliers, which I'll show you here in a minute. And, you know, these trees, I don't crank it in. It's sort of just gently tight. I don't want the tree to be immobile, but I do want it to stay in place, but I don't want it so tight that it's going to bite in, because, you know, these jades are, you know, they're kind of soft-trunked beasts, so we definitely don't want to squeeze them too hard with this. But you'll see when you pull on this, it kind of takes up the slack in the wire, and it really doesn't take much to make sure that the tree doesn't move. You can see there it's quite stable. So I just snipped off the excess there to keep it nice and neat. And you know, now what I typically do is put in more soil, kind of, you know, get the chunks of wire out of there, and you know, make sure that the tree is in the right orientation that you want, and add a little more soil and gently work it in, because this is where you really as you push the soil in between the roots, and I'm going to take it pretty easy on this because there's not a whole lot of roots anyhow, but I want to just gently kind of, I don't know, for the lack of a better description, kind of connect the tree and the soil with the roots that it does have. And so I'll pour in more soil and gently work it in. And I'm going to keep it a little deep for now because, there's a lot of soil under these roots, and I think this tree will quickly grow new roots to fill the pot. But it'll be quite dry on top for a while, so I'll probably water it a little bit more than I normally would, just because I know I'm not going to overwater it, because the roots are only in the first inch of the soil, so it'll take a while before they make their way down to the bottom. But anyway, I'll just kind of gently work the soil in here, and you can literally feel the tree getting stiffer and stiffer, even with the small amount of roots that this one has, as it all gets kind of nice and compacted in there. But take it easy. You don't want to break the roots that you do have. So that's looking pretty good. Just kind of take a look and make sure I like all the angles here. And I think it's looking pretty good. And I am going to go ahead and water it, and then we'll come back and do our victory lap, because everybody knows a tree looks better wet. So here we are, back for the victory lap after a fresh watering. And I think this is a charming little tree, vastly superior to the blue pot that we had it in. And I am really looking forward to this tree having a long, healthy life in this beautiful pot. And as a parting thought, don't give up. Just give it a merry-go-round spin here on your trees. This tree was almost certifiably dead, and you can see it looks quite good now. And I believe it'll have a long, happy life. And with that, thank you for spending time with me, and I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon.